Alf, the Baby Baboon, 1995. Wow, that takes me back. He was brought to us in late January by a Natal Parks Board officer who had confiscated him. A chacma baboon aged about 4 weeks. He was a pitiful sight. He was stunted, had thin, rickety legs, and was too weak to stand. He was also severely dehydrated and had a distended pot belly caused by malnutrition, a condition called kwashiorkor, commonly seen in starving African babies. The game ranger explained that he had seen a Zulu beggar woman sitting on the pavement of Escort, Main Street, with him. She had dressed the baby balloon in an infant's pink baby grow and was trying to extract money from passers-by by urging him to get up and dance when she sang and clapped her hands. When the ranger had asked the woman how she had acquired this baboon, she said she had set a trap for a troop which had been raiding her crops, and she had caught him. This was an utterly implausible story, as baboon mothers keep their babies tightly to their breasts until they are weaned at about 6 months old, after which they ride on their mothers' backs like small, jaunty jockeys. All raids are performed solely by male baboons and sub-adults. The only way in which a baby or even a youngster would become separated from its mother is when the mother had been killed. Even then, another troop member often grabs the orphan and takes it to safety. On further questioning, the woman told the ranger that she had had him a couple of weeks and had been feeding him on black coffee and uputu, a dry porridge made from maize meal. Because baboons are declared vermin and not a protected species, the park board official wasn't able to do anything but confiscate this sorry little creature and warn the woman that it's against the law to keep a wild animal as a pet. The clinic nurses at our Centre for Rehabilitation of Wildlife named our new patient Alf, as he looked very like the alien character from a children's TV sitcom. His ears were far too big for his wizened little head, and his sparse, dull black fur was patchy from severe vitamin deficiency. But in spite of his precarious grip on life, he still had a small spark in his soulful brown eyes. He was adopted by the nurse on duty and has spent his first week with her, clinging to a uniform blouse as he would to his mother's belly fur. She bottle-fed him cow's milk enriched with a vitamin supplement, baby cereal, and morsels of soft fruit like banana, mango, and papaya. Alf's health improved dramatically from day to day. He filled out and his fur grew back into a soft, fluffy, dark grey coat. His undersized little legs would be bowed and misshapen for life due to rickets, but he became strong enough to walk and even scamper as the weeks went by. Because he was feeling better, he became bolder too. It became impossible for Michelle, his foster mother, to keep him in the woolen shawl, slinging pouch tied around her waist, and in which we kept our primate babies. She left him shut in her bedroom for an afternoon as an experiment, and returned to find that he had managed to open her bedroom drawer, remove a full bottle of his expensive vitamin syrup, chew off the lid, and trickle the contents all over her brand new duvet, permanently staining it a hideous red. As he was the only baboon at the Rehabilitation Centre at the time, Alf became the clinic mascot, rather than being relegated to the primate enclosures with the monkeys and lemurs, and he enjoyed himself enormously. He would sit on the draining board in the kitchen while we were filling baby bottles with warm milk for the half-dozen or so baby antelope we were hand-raising. We knew to watch the bottles carefully, but when we opened the bucket of Milton sterilizing solution in which the teats soaked, we would find it empty. Alf would be sitting some distance away looking innocently up at the ceiling, but with telltale bulging cheek pouches. One of us would have to secure him in a headlock and hook the teats out with a finger, then go through the time-consuming performance of thoroughly washing and re-sterilizing the teats. He never chewed or damaged them in any way, just loved to store them in his cheeks. On the occasion we scolded Alf, he would get his revenge by sneaking into one of the cupboards under the clinic counters, where he would defecate and creep out again, closing the door quietly afterwards. We would only realize what he had done when we were alerted by the dreadful, hideously pungent smell of baboon dung ripening somewhat in the humid tropical heat, and have to locate the source. This sounds like one heck of a monkey or baboon. To have Alf around was great fun, especially for the younger volunteers, but he had to be supervised every second of the day. Apart from tucking any small objects in his cheek pouches, he quickly learned how to open doors. Our operating theatre was always kept closed, but Alf would saunter over on his pink, hand-like feet, stand up on his bow legs, and reach the door handle. We discovered this when I went to prepare for a procedure, splinting and strapping a broken wing on a crowned eagle. The surgery was a disaster area. Alf had slipped in unseen, closing the door behind him, and then he had opened all the cupboards, pulled out the contents, and strewn them on the floor. He had unwrapped sterile surgical instruments, ripped syringes out of their sterile packs with his teeth, and generally laid waste as baboons can. Fortunately, he hadn't sampled any of the drugs, like ketamine and other high-schedule medication, or cut himself on a scalpel, but the damage was done. We would have to throw away most of the stock because we didn't know the extent of what he had managed to contaminate. He sidled up to me while I stood, staring in dismay at the trashed operating theatre, and slipped his warm, leathery paw into my hand, gazing up into my face and making quiet, grunting noises. I melted and picked him up for a cuddle. How could I chastise this confiding little wild animal? Ever since Alf had been with us, our public relations officer had been busy trying to find a way of getting Alf into a more suitable and permanent home. We had done our job by nursing him back to health, but he couldn't stay with us. He needed to be with other baboons, and because he was on his own, imprinted on humans and so badly stunted, meant he would be unable to release him with a troop in spite of being young enough to be accepted. A Belgian woman called Rita Mellio runs a primate rehabilitation centre in the Eastern Transvaal, which admits and cares for orphaned, injured and confiscated pet baboons. She has several enormous secure enclosures on her farm in which they can live permanently. Like vervet monkeys, it's almost impossible to release baboons back into the wild. No game park can contain the new arrivals, which would be chased out by existing troops. Farmers quite justifiably shoot them, as they can decimate crops overnight. Rita agreed to take Alf, on the condition that we arranged to get him up to her. The distance from Durban to the Eastern Transvaal is too far to consider taking him up by car, but one of our junior nurses was dating a pilot in the South African Air Force. He flew Mirage fighters and was an instructor at the airbase in Durban. With a lot of sweet talking, she managed to persuade him to agree to take Alf up to Hoedspruit, the big airbase in the Eastern Transvaal. We threw a farewell party for Alf, passing around a homemade card embellished with his paw prints. Our PRO had allowed Michelle to press his feet onto her ink pad, and the words, "I promise to be a good baboon," were printed on the card, which we had all signed. The junior nurse and I delivered Alf to the two young pilots in their immaculate, crisp khaki flying suits on the morning they were due to fly a training mission to Hoedspruit. The little baboon was sitting forlornly in a small pet carrier, and with some concern they looked anxiously at his sorrowful little face, peering from behind the wire mesh. Nothing can look more pitiful than a baby baboon. I warned them, on no condition let him out, no matter how much he pleads. There's no telling what he might do. "We'll look after him," promised the older of the two, the instructor. We both waved Alf goodbye as he was carried over the concrete apron in his travelling box, and watched as they stowed the carrier at the feet of the pilot in the rear cockpit of the gleaming jet, which stood glinting in the hot Durban midday sun, already fueled up and prepared for takeoff. That evening, the young nurse got a phone call from her boyfriend. Sobbing with laughter, she told us what had happened. After taking off and reaching cruising height, the second pilot had checked on Alf. The sad baboon demeanor had proved irresistible, and he had decided to take him out and cuddle him to comfort him for the rest of the 20-minute flight at just subsonic speed. As he cradled Alf in his arms, they hit some turbulence, and Alf lost control of his bowels, with fright spraying them both from head to foot with very loose diarrhea. Even the inside of the Perspex canopy bubble got splattered. The unfortunate young pilots were forced to remain as they were until they landed. Then they had to climb out of their now stinking plane and explain to the apoplectic commandant why they and the rear cockpit was covered in baboon dung. Rita was there to meet Alf, and they took him back to her establishment for a thorough bath and a good feed. We received regular reports and photographs from her showing how well he had settled in. An older female had adopted him, allowing him to ride around the big main enclosure on her back, perched jauntily near her tail like a small furry jockey, and she spent hours grooming him. There were plenty of young baboons for him to play with, and Rita told us that she barely noticed his rickety legs as he tussled in the dust when he play wrestled with his new siblings. Isn't that a lovely story? Now there's another story that's accompanied with that, because this is a very short article from Fee, but I'm going to show you an image first. Here it comes. Jack the Signalman. Jack, born 1880, was a Chacma baboon who attained some fame for acting as an assistant to a disabled railway signalman in South Africa. Jack was the pet and assistant of double-leg amputee signalman James Wide, who worked for the Cape Town Port Elizabeth Railway Service. James Jumper Wide had been known for jumping between rail cars until an accident where he fell and lost both of his legs. To assist him performing his duties, Wide purchased the baboon named Jack in 1881 and trained him to push his wheelchair and to operate the railway signals under supervision. An official investigation was initiated after a concerned member of the public reported that a baboon was observed changing railway signals at Utenhage. Okay, guys, this is a head-banging moment, okay? Sorry. Can you imagine if you're about to catch a train and you see a baboon changing the signals? Let me repeat this. An official investigation was initiated after a concerned member of the public reported that a baboon was observed changing railway signals at Utenhage near Port Elizabeth. After initial skepticism, the railway decided to officially employ Jack once his job competency was verified. The baboon was paid 20 cents a day and half a bottle of beer each week. It is widely reported that in his 9 years of employment with the railway company, Jack never made a single mistake. After 9 years of duty, Jack died of tuberculosis in 1890. Jack's skull is in the collection of the Albany Museum in Grahamstown. Oh, wow. I've been to the Albany Museum in Grahamstown, and I have seen Jack's skull. I never knew what it was all about, but now I do. Isn't that incredible? Don't you love how networking works? You know, all this sort of history that comes out. So, guys, if you live in the Grahamstown area, go to the Albany Museum and go and check out Jack's skull, the only railway worker who was a baboon. And that's got to be true. All right, guys, please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell for the updates. Please like this video, please share this video, and above all, please stay safe.